Do you see my screen?
Yep, all good. So
Excellent.
once again, you feel free to type away and I'll relay that to Michael as well.
All right, so here we've got the skull. What I've done is I've aligned this to the center of the workspace using the alignment in the model designer, because all you need to do is make sure that the skull is joined together, place a point and place another point, and then the third and fourth points you can place over here somewhere, and then it aligns it to the center, but it's not 100% aligned. You know, you may have to do a few other little tweaks and so on. So the articulator, which is like a virtual jaw, condyles we call them, we bring those into the scene. Now, this is just a little bit of a brief discussion of why we did and what we did. And in saying that, we're moving the lower jaw. A lot of digital software moves the upper jaw, just like a mechanical articulator. And when we designed this, we thought, no, this is incorrect. We need to move the lower jaw because, you know, otherwise the head would be bopping up and down, you know, always saying yes, yes, yes. and that was not the way to do it. So, all right. So what I'm going to do is in the Articulator module on the side, we're going to bring in some condyles. So I'm working on Blender 2.93.5. So your menu, if you're using 2.83, may look a little bit differently. All right. So when we click on this one, it'll bring in these condyle things, and you can see them through the skull. So in transparent mode, we can see them over here. Now, these are set 110 millimeters apart. So if you measure from the center to the center, that's 110 millimeters, and that equates to most dental articulators. Already we can spot that in this specific case, there's an error because the condyle, the center of the condyles are slightly further apart. So maybe when they did that, that was an average that they've used, okay? So we're looking at it from the front view, and the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to use these arrows. Now, when I use these arrows, they shift. So what's actually happening is this is a mirror image from one to the other. You don't see that at the moment, but if we look at the properties toolbar, this is a mirror image. And whenever I click on this, it will move it apart, okay? Now, if you'd like to know how far apart it moves, we can always look in the items tab, because here you'll see millimeters. So now it's at 118 millimeters apart. So that's a good way of actually determining how far these are apart. So when I've got this in place, we will look at it from the side. Okay, so we're going to go side profile. And again, it's in transparent just to explain what is happening here. So then we're going to use these arrows to bring them to the side. So as I click, it incrementally moves to the side, and I can move it down and I can move it up like that. Okay, let's take the transparency off and see where these condyles are. So that's quite close. So what I want to do is if the lower jaw and skull is not 100% correct, I'm going to align the skull a little bit. So I'm going to show you how we're going to do this. So I'm going to select the top, okay, and we're going to shift left click the bottom, and the shortcut is Control P on your keyboard, Control P. Then we're going to parent. So it says set parent to your object. Yeah, that means now if I move the lower one, the top one will move with it, as you can see. And we can hide the top one, and the top was still going to move with it, even though we can't see it. And just for accuracy, I'm going to try and get this sort of aligned here. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to move this down a little bit, and I'm going to rotate the jaw a little bit. just so that we can demonstrate what's happening. So let's just assume it's like that. But what I want to do is I want to move this slightly further apart, maybe like that. Okay. Now, of course, we still need an angle because at the moment it's, you know, parallel with the y-axis. And this is where we're going to be using the inclinations. So I'm going to unhide the skull and I'm going to unparent it. So to unparent something is Alt P. So parent is Control P, unparent is Alt P, and we're going to clear and keep transformation. This means it's going to stay exactly where it is. Okay. The next thing we want to do is we're going to then accept this. So we're going to accept the condyle location. And upon doing that, we've got these little blue things appear. Okay, so I'm going to hide this and we can see. So this is the eminence, and it will guide down this blue object. Now, in order to do that, we're going to then set the right inclination, and that puts it at default values. Now, these default values are similar to an articulator, and it's 33 degrees. So it slopes down 33 degrees like this, and it's 15 degrees in the horizontal. And already we can see how close that is with the jaw. So whoever, you know, the research done to get these values is pretty spot on, because we can see it goes with the longitudinal axis of the lower jaw. Absolutely fantastic. Now from that, we're going to copy this rotation of the wide condyle. So I'm going to click on this one and you'll see how it has snapped it into position. So we've got a very close match to the actual human jaw. I'm going to do the same with the other side. So once we've done that, we're going to set the left inclination. It's 15 and 30 degrees. Now, if you've got somebody with a different inclination, for example, you can then set this over here. So here, this one goes up and down. And then the jaw is going to slope in this exact degree rotation. So let's just set this
Michael,
to 30
just a
degrees.
question. Can you change the 15 to a different degree?
Yes, we can change that too. Okay, so when we snap the condyle to this, it will snap to the exact correct location. So note that this is minus 15. So in Blender, whatever's on the right hand side would be minus, and on the left hand side would be plus. But this is not too difficult, because you can actually see how this is rotated. So I'm going to go copy rotations to condyle, and that will snap into position. Voila. So here we've got a simulation of the anatomic features. It's not 100%, but you know, we're trying to get it to something workable. All right, so now that we've done this, it sort of concludes where our condyles are. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create an animation for this jaw. Now I'm going to open up the outliner just to explain what's going on. Okay, so here you'll see the condyles, and you see all of these. It's made up of four objects, and you can see there's 4 objects in here. All right, so I'm going to unhide the skull, and we're going to animate this now. And I'm going to go down to the articulator constraints. Now, this is important to understand, because what we are actually doing is we're making this articulator work, and we're bringing in all of these other things to make it work. So I'm going to click on Set Open Centric. So when I click on that, you'll see 2 things happening. You've got this ring here, yeah, this arrow that goes around, and you've got incisal table and this measurement, and it's set on 0. So that gives us a good indication of how much we are opening it as far as an articulator is concerned. So this is based on an articulator. Now, when we say open it up by one millimeter, in fact, to me, I think it's a bit incorrect, because we would be opening up the jaw in degrees and not millimeters, because this in relation to what, but it will still give you an indication that it's like an articulator. So once we've got this, I'm going to wanting to open it. Now, if you look carefully, well, you can't see that now, but I'll show you while we're going, when we carry on. There's like a little cube that appears. So what we're going to do is, when I set this, you'll see this open up. Okay. Now this is only opening up because the lower one, this jaw piece, this mandible is called lower. If it's not called lower at the time, it will not open up, but you can just link it to the animation and it will then link up, and I'll explain to you in a while how that works. So I'm going to open up something called the timeline here. Okay, and you can quite easily open it up by clicking on timeline and moving up. This is a window itself. Now we're working with keyframes, and at the moment we don't see any keyframes because this object is the one that's been animated, and everything else is parented to this object. Very similar, like I've parented the skull earlier to the mandible. This is parented to this object. So if I click on this, there's no keyframes, but if I click on this, you'll see this orange keyframe, and that's at 0.0, and it's set to 0.5. This is the playhead. This is called the playhead. So we're going to set the rotation in the rotation X. You'll see there's like all these locks here on the side. There's only one without the lock. This is the one that we're going to rotate. As you can see, we can rotate it open and close like that. And then we can set the keyframe. So let us hypothetically set it to, say, 3 degrees, which equates to 6 millimeters on the incisal pin. So we can have a look. 2, 4, 6 millimeters. And then we're going to apply this. And when we move the playhead, it opens and closes. Okay, so this is the first animation point, is opening and closing. The next animation point we're going to do is a protrusive. So we're going to set this. And this is all about setting the animation, and this is about editing the animation. So let us set that. And in our video tutorials, we explain that you need to take the arrow and drag this forward like this. Okay, so you can see how it actually moves down this plane like that. Okay, so I'm going to set it forward, and we're going to apply the keyframe. Okay, now we can move it backwards and forwards like that. Okay, so that's the second animation point. If you look at the outliner, you can see we've got open bite and we've got protrusive. And now we're going to set the right excursive. You'll see there's like an arrow that points in this direction, which means the jaw has to move into this direction. So that's quite easy to do again. You'll see there, we've got in the Z axis, I'm going to move this across. And while I'm moving that across, we can see how it moves down that one. But on the other side, it doesn't move at all. Okay,
Can you
so
put
here,
a Bennett's side shift into it, Michael?
yes, this is exactly where I'm getting to. So I'm going to move this to the side a little bit, just assuming like that. And before I press apply, we're going to get a little bit more complicated. So up top here, I'm going to click on the x-axis, and I'm going to put -1 in here. So typically speaking, Bennett side shift can be 2 millimeters. I don't quite know how to measure the Bennett side shift, to be honest. But so we've put that in as well. Okay, so what we're going to do then is we're going to apply this keyframe. So that's the excursive movement. So you can see when you look closely, I'm going to hide the top. We can see when I click on this, we can see how it shifts slightly to the side as well. So here we go, like that. Okay. So finally, let's give it the next one, the other side. And I'm going to put again 1 millimeter side shift. And I'm going to move this across. And this is it. And we're going to then play this animation. Okay, so I'm going to click open and play it. And we can see how this is moving. Okay, like that. So very similar to an adjustable articulator. Let's view the right-hand side. And we can see how this is actually behaving. And it's moving down. If you look carefully, we've got numbers there. And we can see it's moved by 10 millimeters down the slope. So if you want to be absolutely precise, you can actually make sure you move it to a certain angle or, millimeters or so. Okay, we're going to view the other side like this, and we're going to view the protrusive like that. Okay. Yeah, and then I'm just going to stop this. And if you look carefully here, this is the cube I was talking about earlier. Now this is called the anchor. Okay, you can see it here, anchor. Now please don't delete this because this is part of the articulator. Every tooth that we animate is going to parent to this little thing here, the anchor. If it's deleted, the articulator is not going to work. This is very important to know. Okay, are there any questions related to that? Because in the next file, we're going to be taking a tooth library and we're going to be cutting it, because this is the objective of an articulator, is to be able to cut splints and crowns and bites or whatever. Wolf, have you got any questions that you can think of?
No, one question I might have is, you mentioned the left-hand menu is for setting the constraints and the right-hand menu is for editing it. So assuming we've now, we've got all the settings, but we want to say fine tune it and go back onto one of these settings. Can you briefly just show us how to maybe edit one of these keyframes?
Yeah, I was going to take this into the next file, but if you wanted to edit something, you would have to click on edit, which will then bring in this object. Now we're going to say edit it and open it up by 5 degrees. Okay, we're going to apply the keyframe. Now we've edited to 5 degrees. Assuming you wanted to close a bite, okay, you would put then -5 degrees, and then we're back to where we started and apply. So then, assuming we want to edit the excursive movement, the right excursive movement, click edit. It'll bring in this object, and then we can set this differently, and we can set the rotation as well if we want to. So just say we do this, apply. So you see we've actually changed the entire animation based on the editing here.
Okay, so the important take-home message is that these arrows in the back, we know they are the parenting mechanism, and they need to be highlighted in orange. Then we know the timeline works. If you push apply keyframe, that will set it to the very last keyframe. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And then one other thing is we can hide this articulator, because sometimes it gets a little bit annoying to watch it when you're making a splint or cutting a crown. We can hide that, and we can unhide the articulator as we are working.
Excellent.
Excellent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the next file. Okay. So in this one, I've got a tooth library in here. And the entire objective is to be able to cut teeth with the articulator. So what we're going to do is we've got this jaw animated, I think. So let's just go back to the articulator. And we're going to view this. Okay, that's good. Now, assuming, well, actually, I should have brought in this tooth library from scratch to demonstrate how it actually works with parenting to the actual animation. Let me do this quickly. I'll just hide this one, use the C key, take all of these teeth, X, and delete them. Alt H to unhide. Okay, now this poor person has no teeth. So I'm going to go into the wax up and we're going to import, say, a generic tooth library. Okay, so here they are. I'm going to be choosing all of them. So I'm just going to skip this and I'm going to just delete the color. I'm going to move these into position. So just grab this and move them like this into position. So this could be a crown, for example, or it could be whatever you're working on, a splint or whatever it is. Okay, it could be a model. All right, so here we've got teeth hypothetically placed in position, and I'd like to animate this. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to separate these teeth so that they're all individual. And then what we're going to do is we've got the jaw animated. Let's just check this again to make sure. Yes, the jaw is animated. Now, what happens if I take one tooth and link it to the animation? Let's see what happens. Link to animation, okay? And we're going to move it. You see how that one tooth has been linked to the animation and it moves exactly with the jaw. Now, we're going to link more of these teeth to the animation. So this could have been, say, a crown. You're making a crown and you want to link it. Let's take all of these and we're going to link these to the animation. Link. See what happens. Okay, you see everything has been linked up. Okay, we can view right side, left side, whatever we want to do. Now what I want to do is I want to edit this, and this is Wolfgang, this is what I was saying earlier. This is where we're going to come to. Now I want to cut a tooth and I will see, okay, well, I'm not happy with the way this moves, or you know, maybe I want to change something. So we're going to go into the editing. All right, so I'm going to, okay, it's incentric. I just want to check. It's incentric. So we're not going to open it. With a splint, we would open it. So we're going to edit the protrusive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this forward. And this tooth library is already exactly to this default location. But just to demonstrate how the cutting works, I'm going to change this a little bit. So we're going to lower this bite a little bit. So I can lower it like this. I can move it across like that. Because I want to do a bit of cutting in this one. So we're going to apply that. And then I'm going to edit the left side. And again, I'm going to purposefully make sure that we're going to get a little bit of a trimming happening here. We close it up a little bit like that, okay? Apply. And I'm going to edit the other side as well, okay, like this.
Is it a good idea to cross-section sometimes, Michael?
Yeah, but this could be a natural occlusion. So if you think hypothetically, the top teeth could be a model and the lower teeth could be a crown. And now we need to cut this into occlusion, right? So we've got everything mapped out. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do some cutting. So I'm going to open up the cutting tools. Now this is actually not too difficult, but so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this lower tooth, assuming this is a crown that we need to trim. So what I'm going to do is these top teeth that are actually in excursive moving across there, we're going to name this the object making the cut. So click on that. And then it appears like this, and then there's an offset of 0.1. And we put that in there because sometimes zirconia crowns may be high and bite, for example, and you want to change that. And in this way, you're expanding the model outwards so that we can actually create a little bit of a little bit more of a cut than what is seen here. If you don't like it, you can always set it to 0.01, for example. We're gonna apply this, and you'll see this becomes transparent. Okay. Next thing is this one is going to be cut. Actually, maybe we should cut both these, because here we've got a little bit of a trimming going on. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to take these two. This is an object being cut, and it's labeled, so you can see object making cut, object being cut, 0, 1, and nothing. So we're going to then click cut on all movements, and I'm going to click on that, and we'll just wait, because what it does, it creates 13 cuts. Okay, so here we can see it's been nicely trimmed, and from here we're going to delete the object making the cut. Okay, so let's have a look and see how this actually works in articulation. So let's view this. Okay, here we go. I'm going to bring up the timeline here, and we're going to just move this across, and we can see it's been perfectly trimmed like that. So in cross section, we've got a nice trim, and it also has been slightly offset as well, like that.
That offsetting is a great idea. Michael, can you, some of our users have made a cut and then they've made another cut on top of the previous cut. Can you explain to us what might occur?
Well, your model is going to disintegrate into many pieces, and your computer is going to take ages to think, because you cannot make a Boolean cut on top of a Boolean cut. It will never work. But if you've cut it once and you want to cut it again, then set the offset to 0.11, and then it'll cut.
So you're making essentially the cutting tool that little bit larger so that you're cutting away from the pre-existing cut surface. Is that correct?
100% correct.
Yeah, okay. So that solves the problem. Or can you remesh the tooth and then cut it? Would that work?
Well, sometimes it does work, but you don't want to lose the quality, the surface topography of the actual tooth.
Okay.
So assuming now we've got an upper bridge, okay, so all of these are bridge pontics or whatever, okay, and we want to cut the top teeth. So this becomes an object being cut, and it always works in crisscross. And we're going to take these here as the object making the cut. Note it's going to go transparent gray. We've got an opportunity to create an offset, and we're going to apply the lower the offset. It goes into transparent, as you can see. Now I'm going to trim all these movements, so cut all movements. We'll just wait for it to calculate. Again, there's like 13 cuts that are going to be applied. Excellent. That didn't take too long. Let's have a look. Here we go. And of course, these would then have to be smoothed down with a smoothing tool. But that's quite easy to do. I'm going to delete the object making the cut, and we're going to actually view this again, how this looks. So let's have a look. I'm going to Alt B is for cross section, Alt B like this. And we're going to have a look inside and see what is actually happening. Here we see. So this has been trimmed. So here the occlusion is a little bit out, but that's probably because it's a premolar there. Let's have a look and see what's happening in the molar region. Just do an Alt-B section over here and have a look. Let's just slide this so we can see it's been trimmed perfectly. Okay, so I'll do one more trimming on the lower front incisors because I've especially lowered. Actually, let's cut the lower teeth. Let's see what happens. So these become the object being cut, making the cut. And we're going to apply the offset. And I'm going to take these 4 teeth and we're going to, these are the objects being cut. Okay, let's have a look and see what happens. Cut all movements. And here we go. We've got a nice, beautiful cut in the excursive movements.
So here's a question, Mike. In regards to crown and bridge work, would you, and say you've got a big case like a full mouth rehab, for example, would you suggest we cut the tooth library, the bite of that, before we go and make the crowns, or during the procedure? What is easier, or is it just much over muchness?
Look, to be honest with you, I would probably say get the cutting and the articulation over and then continue doing the crowns, because it is quite complicated. You can think about the lower jaw needs to be animated. If you've got the tooth library or whatever already trimmed the way you have, it is probably easier then to connect them up to the surfaces that we create in the crown module. So I would probably say get the cutting over and done with, and then, if you're doing one crown, for example, it's fine, you can do it while you're doing the crown. But I think if you've got a very large case, something like this, I would get the cutting done,
Yeah.
and then continue.
Okay, that's a good thing. All right.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a splint. Okay, so
yeah, I was just going to ask you about the splint.
okay, so splint for cutting. Now I've made this splint beforehand, and it's got a lot of coverage because it actually doesn't have many undercuts. So here what I've done is, let's just hide the splint, H to hide. So what I've done is I've opened the bite. Okay, so this is something I didn't discuss yet. Maybe I should just touch on that quickly. I'll just touch on that quickly. So splint here. Oh, okay, here. So this one is an occlusion. Of course, we're not working with a skull, but it's very good to understand how this works. So here, I don't know if I've got an animation. No, I don't have an animation. I've only got the condyles. So what we're going to do is we're going to open this thing up. So open, set open. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just check how this works. So here, I've actually done something incorrect. Just hold on a second. Let's just delete the animation that I've got. Okay, let's try this again. So this is my upper model, name upper, and this is my lower model. Okay, so we're going to bring the animation in here, this one over here, and then we're going to open up the bite. Okay, so now we can see that's open, but the jaw's not moving. Again, let's put this to the animation, link to animation. Okay, now that should work. That should open and close. Okay, I haven't set the keyframe yet. Okay, that's okay. I'm going to choose this one over here. Okay, and then we're going to open this like that. Okay, so here it opens. Let us set that open to, say, 3 degrees. Okay, now we want to keep this open for good. So we've opened up the articulator. We're going to create our splint on that. Now, how do we do that? Okay, we've just pivoted the jaw open, And we're going to apply the keyframe, and we're going to go to this one here. So it says set new location for lower and delete animation. Let's click on that. The animation has been cleared. This has been opened up almost like you've opened it up outside of the digital. Okay, it may
So
not be
you've
100%.
raised the articulator pin, for example.
That's correct. That's
Yeah.
correct. Now we're going to bring in a new animation because we want this animated so that it actually cuts the splint. So we're going to click on this one, but this time we're not going to open it. We're just going to create a keyframe. Then we're going to set the protrusive, bring that forward. You notice that this one is not linked because we've actually deleted the animation, but that's okay for now. And then we're going to just go across, set that, apply, set that, across, and apply. So if I wanted to link that, we can also link that. So it's actually as easy as that. Okay. Now we're going to open up the splint. All right. Here we've got the splint. It's been made, and we're going to cut it. First thing we need to check is that everything moves, that the animation actually moves, which it does. I'm going to link the jaw again. Yes, it's working. Okay. Now the objective is to cut the splint. So we're going to go into the cutting tools. And if you don't know what's happening, just read the tooltips. They will appear for 100 seconds. So this becomes our object being cut. And this is going to be the object making the cut. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the offset exactly like before. It's going to turn transparent like that. And at this stage, if your Boolean doesn't work, it's probably because your lower model wasn't animated. If it's not animated, one Boolean cut will cut on top of another one and another one. Your computer's going to crash, or it's going to think a very, very long time. So when I click this, make sure this object making the cut is animated, because this is the one that's actually being used to cut the object. So if this is not animated, you're heading into trouble. Okay. So let's cut all movements. Okay, we'll just wait. There's another thing that I'd just like to mention is that the splint itself, please don't voxel remesh it too fine. There's no need for it. It can actually be, the vertices can actually be very loose and sparse, because, you know, the more dense a model is, the longer it's going to take to cut. And we don't actually need a very dense looking splint. What is very important is the inside fitting surface. What's on the outside doesn't really matter that much. You know, the definition is there. Even if we voxel remesh it at 0.5, you know, it just makes the calculations a little bit easier. So here we've got a nice cut. And if I look at that as well, we can actually view how this has been trimmed. I'm going to just view this from the other side and move the playhead like that. Excellent. And then finally, with the splint, of course, we would then go back to the splint module, make sure that this is called layer, because at the moment it's called object being cut. Hit this button where it says splint cutting tools, name layer. We know we've got the target model, which is our fitting surface, and then just cut fitting surface. Okay, let's have a quick view of this. And here we've got our splint finished. Of course, we would still smooth that down a little bit. Excellent. I think I've explained most things. If there's any questions, now would be a perfect time to ask.
Excellent. Well done, Mike.
Okay, so no questions. I will still delete my object because that's the final step that we do.